The patrol drone's camera captured everything in clinical detail. 4 soldiers, standard regime kit checkpoint protocol by the book. 2 civilians, documentation absent, origin unknown. The footage would loop in analysis rooms for days afterward, each frame dissected for meaning that refused to reveal itself. The girl spoke first. Her voice carried the particular exhaustion of someone who had explained themselves too many times already. "We're not from here. We don't have papers because we weren't issued any." Sergeant Hicks had worked checkpoints for 8 months since Metropolis. He knew the script: verify, escalate if needed, maintain order. The regime's directives were clear. Undocumented metahumans represented potential catastrophe. Every threat assessment began with control. "Step aside, ma'am. We'll need to process you both separately." The boy beside her hadn't spoken yet. He looked like he'd just woken up. Rumpled clothes, half-closed eyes, the posture of someone profoundly uninterested in his surroundings. When Hicks gestured toward the processing tent, the boy's gaze shifted slightly. Not aggressive, not defiant. Just aware. "No," the girl said. "We stay together. Protocol dictated escalation." Hicks nodded to Corporal Way, who moved to secure the girl's arm. Standard procedure. Gentle but firm. The kind of restraint that communicated authority without violence. The boy's eyes opened fully then. "Don't touch her!" His voice was flat. No anger, no threat. A statement of fact delivered with the enthusiasm of someone mentioning the weather. Hicks had heard genuine menace before the tremor of barely contained rage, the edge that preceded violence. This wasn't that. This was something else entirely. Way's hand closed around the girl's wrist. The corporal dropped. No convulsion, no cry, no visible injury. Way simply ceased, his body folding to the pavement, as if every animating principle had been switched off between one heartbeat and the next. The drone camera registered no projectile, no energy discharge, no physical contact. One frame showed a soldier executing lawful detention. The next showed a corpse. Hicks reached for his sidearm. Training overrode thought threat presents neutralize immediately. His hand never completed the motion. The world narrowed to a single realization: the boy hadn't moved, hadn't gestured, hadn't even shifted his weight. Private Moss opened fire. The round struck pavement wall air. None found their target. Not because the boy dodged, he remained perfectly still, expression unchanging, but because Moss collapsed mid-burst finger slack on the trigger rifle, clattering against concrete. The remaining soldier backed away. Weapon lowered instinct, overwhelming protocol. Hicks felt his own hand drift from his holster. Some primitive part of his brain was screaming calculations his conscious mind refused to process. The girl broke the silence. "Yogiri, we talked about this. They grabbed you. They were going to separate us. That's different from actual harm." The boy Yogiri tilted his head slightly, considering. "Feels the same from here." The girl turned to Hicks. Her expression held no satisfaction, no triumph, just weariness. "You should call this in. Tell whoever's in charge that trying to detain us was a mistake. Tell them we're leaving. Tell them not to follow." Hicks found his voice. "I can't let you. You don't have a choice." The girl's tone wasn't cruel. It was simply accurate. "Look at your men. Look at what happened when you tried. Now imagine what happens if you don't let us walk away." The boy was already moving hands in pockets, gait unhurried. The girl followed. Hicks watched them disappear around the corner, his hand hovering over his radio. 2 bodies on the ground. No explanation that would satisfy the debrief. No tactical assessment that would make sense in any report. He keyed the radio anyway. "Command, this is Checkpoint 7. We have a situation. Unknown metahuman threat. 2KIA. No hostile action observed. Suspects departed westbound. Repeat, no hostile action observed." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Hicks thought the transmission had failed. Then, clarify your last 7. No hostile action, but 2 casualties. Affirmative. They just stopped. Both soldiers. No visible cause. Another pause. Maintain position. Secure the bodies. Tech team en route for analysis. The drone footage uploaded automatically to regime servers. By the time the tech team arrived, the file had already propagated through secure channels, flagged, categorized, escalated. Within the hour, it reached the desks of analysts who specialized in meta-human threat assessment. Within 2 hours, it reached Superman. The analysis room hummed with filtered air and subdued lighting. Superman stood before the frozen image, a boy unremarkable in every metric except the absolute stillness surrounding him. 2 bodies on the ground. No energy signature, no combat stance. Just a kid who looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Play it again. The technician complied. Superman watched the sequence 3 times. Wei's hand on the girl's wrist, the boy's voice. The corporal's collapse. Each repetition confirmed what Superman's mind rejected: causation without mechanism, death without violence, threat without posture. Wonder Woman entered without announcement, her presence shifting the room's atmosphere. She studied the screen for exactly 4 seconds before speaking. Containment or elimination? Information first. Superman's voice carried the careful modulation of someone who had learned to control every impulse. We don't act on incomplete data. We have complete data. Unknown meta-human. Instant lethality. No counter-observable. The only question is whether we cage it or end it. Superman replayed the footage once more. The girl's exhaustion, the boy's apathy, the absence of malice in either face. After Metropolis, after Lois, after everything, he had learned to see catastrophe in its infancy. To recognize the moment before tragedy crystallized. This felt different. "We contain," he said. Carefully, "I'll handle initial contact personally." Wonder Woman's expression suggested doubt, but not disagreement. "And if careful fails, then we escalate. But we try careful first." The analysis team had already begun predictive modeling. Probable routes, likely destinations, psychological profiles built from seconds of footage. The computational power of a global surveillance state focused on 2 people who had no idea they were already surrounded. Superman studied the frozen image one final time. The boy's eyes half closed, but fully aware. The girl's defensive posture. 2 people who didn't belong in this world, who hadn't asked to be here, who represented a threat simply by existing. He knew that feeling. "Locate them," he said. "But no engagement without my direct authorization. No one approaches until I arrive." The technician nodded, fingers already working across holographic interfaces. Satellite imagery, facial recognition, traffic cameras. The net was closing, precise and inevitable. In a safe house 3 districts away, Batman received the same footage through different channels. He watched it once, then closed the file. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, considering responses, weighing options. Every instinct he possessed screamed the same conclusion. This wasn't a criminal. Wasn't even a combatant. This was something that existed outside the framework Gotham had prepared him for. Outside every framework he knew. He opened a secure channel to Zatanna. "I need the tower." Her response came immediately. "That bed..." "Worse. Superman's going to try containment. And you think that's a mistake?" Batman looked at the frozen image of Yogiri's face, bored, tired, utterly indifferent to the corpses at his feet. "I think containment assumes you can build a box strong enough. I don't believe that box exists." "I'll make the arrangements. How long do we have?" Batman checked the timestamp on the analysis report. Superman's tactical team was already mobilizing. Hours, maybe. Less if Superman moves personally. Then we'd better hope they don't do anything stupid in the meantime. Batman terminated the connection and began preparations. Not to fight, not to win. To minimize casualties when the inevitable occurred. Because it would occur. Superman would try to control what couldn't be controlled. The regime would attempt to cage what shouldn't be touched. And somewhere in the machinery of that collision, people would die for the simple crime of following orders. He had seen this pattern before. Seen it in Gotham, in the League, in every structure that believed authority could substitute for wisdom. The regime was built on the principle that sufficient power properly applied could prevent any catastrophe. They were about to learn the limits of that principle. The boy on the screen, Yogiri, hadn't been trying to prove anything, hadn't been making a statement. He had simply set a boundary and enforced it with the casual inevitability of natural law. Don't touch her. 2 words. 2 deaths. And now the entire weight of Superman's surveillance state bearing down on someone who just wanted to be left alone. Batman began typing contingencies, knowing most would prove worthless. You couldn't strategize against something that didn't fight. Couldn't outmaneuver someone who didn't move. Couldn't contain someone who existed as a hard stop to every form of coercion. The best he could do was be ready to extract the survivors. The sun set over a city that didn't know it was holding its breath. Somewhere in its streets, 2 people walked without destination, without plan, looking for a way home that didn't exist yet. And behind them, the machinery of the regime began its slow, inevitable compression. The checkpoint footage looped endlessly in analysis rooms across 3 continents. Experts studied. Algorithms processed. Threat assessments escalated. No one noticed what the footage actually showed. Not power, just a boundary, and the cost of crossing it. The regime's central command occupied what had once been the Hall of Justice. The transformation was deliberate monuments to hope repurposed for order, symbols of inspiration, converted to instruments of control. Superman stood before a wall of tactical displays, each screen feeding real-time data from a surveillance grid that covered 6 continents. The boy's face repeated across multiple feeds. Facial recognition had tracked him through 17 cameras before the trail went cold near the industrial district. Not hidden. Simply absent from coverage zones, as if he knew exactly where the gaps existed. He didn't, of course. The gaps were random, temporary, the natural fluctuations in any monitoring system. But the coincidence felt deliberate. Wonder Woman entered through the operations door, her stride purposeful. The search grid is expanding. We'll have confirmation within the hour. Superman didn't turn from the screens. Pull back the perimeter teams. No direct engagement. You've said that 3 times now. Her voice carried impatience refined through months of watching Superman hesitate when certainty was required. We have an unknown metahuman who kills without visible mechanism. Every hour we delay is another hour he could what he walked away. Didn't seek out additional targets, didn't make demands, just left. After killing 2 soldiers for doing their jobs, after they attempted to separate him from his companion. Superman finally turned. His face showed the careful blankness he'd cultivated since Metropolis, the mask that covered calculation. There's a difference. There's a threat. The distinction is academic. Superman pulled up the checkpoint footage again. He had watched it 47 times now, each viewing searching for something his training insisted must be there. A gesture, a tell, some physical component to the deaths. The footage offered nothing. The boy spoke. The soldiers fell. Cause and effect without visible connection. Run the profile analysis again. I want to know who they are, where they came from, what they want. The AI compliance officer's voice emerged from the console's synthesized politeness over algorithmic efficiency. Facial recognition matches no existing database. Voice analysis suggests non-native English speakers' origin indeterminate. No digital footprint, no biological records, no documented existence prior to 48 hours ago. That's impossible. Everyone leaves traces. Affirmative. Current hypothesis, either comprehensive identity erasure or extra-dimensional origin. Wonder Woman stepped closer to the display, which means they're either extremely dangerous criminals or exactly what they appear to be, people who don't belong here. Either way, we contain them before they become a larger problem. Superman knew she was right. Knew it with the same certainty that had driven every decision since Lois died. Threats had to be managed preemptively. Catastrophes prevented before they crystallized. The old way, waiting, investigating, hoping for the best, had gotten Metropolis killed. But something about this felt different. I'll handle first contact personally, alone. That's not negotiable. His tone closed the discussion. If this escalates, you're back up. But I make the initial approach. Wonder Woman's expression showed disagreement she was too disciplined to voice. You're thinking of them as victims. They're unknowns, unpredictable. That makes them threats. It makes them people we don't understand yet. After Joker, after everything we've built, you're still looking for redemption narratives. She turned toward the tactical map, fingers tracing probable search vectors. There are no good accidents, Superman. Just disasters we haven't categorized yet. The words stung because they echoed his own thoughts too closely. How many times had he given second chances? How many times had mercy created opportunities for greater harm? The regime existed because the old assumptions, trust, restraint, hope, had failed catastrophically. But the boy's face on the screen didn't match the profile of someone seeking destruction. The weariness in those eyes felt familiar. The exhaustion of carrying something you never asked for. 24 hours, Superman said. I locate them, establish communication, assess intent. If they're hostile, we respond accordingly. If they're simply lost, they killed 2 soldiers who tried to restrain them. Context matters. Context is what we tell ourselves to justify hesitation. Wonder Woman moved toward the door. I'll position tactical teams at 20-kilometer intervals. When your assessment completes, we'll be ready. She left before he could object. Superman returned his attention to the displays, knowing she was already implementing protocols he couldn't officially sanction. The regime functioned through this tension, his public restraint balanced against her practical ruthlessness. It kept him from becoming what he feared while ensuring nothing slipped through the gaps. Usually, he pulled up the personnel files of the dead soldiers. Way Corporal Marcus, 3 years with the regime exemplary record family in the residential sectors. Moss Private Jennifer, recent recruit idealistic, believed in the mission. Both dead in seconds for following standard procedure. The loss should have hardened his resolve. Should have confirmed Wonder Woman's assessment. Instead, it raised questions he couldn't silence. If the boy wanted carnage, why stop at 2? Why walk away? Why the warning through the girl instead of simply continuing? Every behavioral analysis suggested someone who had set a boundary and enforced it precisely, no more, no less. That precision worried him more than random violence would have. Random could be contained through overwhelming force. Precise suggested planning control purpose. And if this level of lethality was controlled, what happened when control was removed? The tactical display updated. Satellite thermal imaging had detected 2 heat signatures matching the search parameter's stationary position in the warehouse district. Superman studied the location, abandoned industrial sector. Minimal civilian presence, multiple exit vectors. Either they were planning something or they were simply resting. He needed to know which. Route me a secure approach vector. No ground teams within 5 kilometers. Air support on standby but out of visual range. Confirmed. ETA 17 minutes at optimal speed. Superman lifted off from the command center Metropolis, spreading below him like a circuit board of controlled humanity. Every light represented order, maintained chaos, prevented the world saved from itself through constant vigilance. He had stopped believing in heroes years ago. Had stopped trusting that goodness alone could prevent catastrophe. The regime worked because it replaced hope with certainty, faith with power, mercy with prophylactic control. But flying toward an unknown meta-human who killed with thoughts, Superman felt something he'd buried since Lois died. Doubt, not about the mission. The regime had prevented countless tragedies through the principles he was about to apply, but about whether those principles could account for someone who existed outside their framework entirely. The warehouse district approached. Superman descended using thermal vision to confirm the signatures. Two people seated showing no signs of preparation or alarm. Either they didn't know he was coming or they didn't care. He landed 300 meters out, using the intervening buildings for cover, while he considered his approach. Every instinct trained through decades of heroism said to announce himself to offer dialogue, to seek peaceful resolution. But he wasn't a hero anymore. He was a guardian. And guardians didn't gamble with security. His comm activated. Wonder Woman's voice encrypted channel. Visual confirmation. Both targets stationary, no visible weapons or preparation. Either they're supremely confident or genuinely unaware. I'm proceeding. Maintain distance. Confirmed. Tactical teams are positioned for rapid response if needed. Superman moved between the buildings, each step calculated. He could cross the remaining distance in under a second, if required. Could extract them to a containment facility before they registered his presence. Could end this with minimal risk if the assessment went wrong. But something made him slow down. Made him approach at a pace that allowed them time to notice him. The boy looked up as Superman rounded the final corner, his expression shifting from drowsy disinterest to mild annoyance. The girl stood immediately, positioning herself slightly forward. Protective, but not aggressive. Superman stopped 20 meters out, close enough to react, far enough to assess. "My name is Superman. I'm here to talk." The boy didn't stand. Didn't move. Just watched with eyes that suggested conversation was the last thing he wanted. The girl spoke first. "We're not causing trouble. We're just trying to find a way home. I understand. But 2 soldiers died at that checkpoint. I need to understand what happened." "They tried to separate us. We declined. They escalated." Her voice carried no defiance, just recitation of facts. "We're not interested in your war, your government, or whatever political situation you're managing. We're travelers who got lost. We'd very much like to stay that way." Superman studied them both. The girl's exhaustion was evident. Too many confrontations, too much explaining. The boy had barely acknowledged his presence, his attention seemingly focused on a fascinating middle distance. "I can help you, but I need you to come with me willingly. There are facilities where we can cage us." The girl cut him off. "That's what you mean. Facilities, processing, protective custody. We've heard the euphemisms. It's not imprisonment. It's control." She stepped forward slightly. "You want to contain us because you don't understand us. Because we're variables you can't predict. I get it. I even understand why you think it's necessary. But the answer is no." Superman felt his jaw tighten. This was the moment when reasonable offers met unreasonable refusal, when soft power had to give way to harder truths. "I'm not asking." The boy finally stood. The motion was casual, unhurried, but Superman's tactical awareness registered it as the most dangerous moment of the encounter. Not because of aggression, because of readiness. "Yes," the boy said, voice flat. "You are." The air itself seemed to pause. Superman had faced God's monsters, threats that could shatter planets. He had learned to read violence in its formative stages, to sense the moment before conflict crystallized. This wasn't that. This was a statement of fact. A line drawn not in challenge, but in simple definition of reality. "I don't want to use force," Superman said. "Then don't." The simplicity of it cut through every tactical consideration Superman had prepared. "Don't want to use force? Then don't use it." As if the entire apparatus of the regime, the lessons of Metropolis, the necessity of preemptive action, all of it could be reduced to a choice. A choice he'd convinced himself he no longer had. His comm activated again. Wonder Woman's voice, urgent. "Superman, we're reading elevated stress in your vitals. Do you need support?" He should have said yes. Should have called in the teams and acted containment protocols, done what the regime existed to do. But looking at the boy's tired eyes, at the girl's defensive exhaustion, Superman found himself taking a step back instead. Stand by. He deactivated the comm before Wonder Woman could object. If I let you walk away, what happens next? Where do you go? The girl glanced at the boy, some unspoken communication passing between them. She turned back to Superman. We keep looking for a way home. We avoid your soldiers, your checkpoints, your entire infrastructure. We cause no problems if no problems are caused for us. And if someone tries to stop you again? The boy's expression didn't change. Didn't need to. The checkpoint footage provided that answer clearly enough. Superman stood at the threshold of a decision that would define everything that followed. Contain them and risk the escalation that everyone would later claim was inevitable. Release them and accept responsibility for whatever came next. The old Superman would have trusted, would have believed in redemption, second chances, the possibility that understanding could replace control. The current Superman knew better, but looking at two people who just wanted to go home, he found himself wavering. I need your word. No more deaths, no more incidents. You avoid contact with regime personnel and they'll avoid contact with you. We can't promise that, the girl said. If your people come after us again, they won't. Not if I instruct them otherwise. He met her eyes, then the boy's. But if you initiate violence, if you become a threat to civilians, everything changes, understood? The boy shrugged. We're not interested in violence. Just peace, quiet, and a way out of here. Superman activated his comm. All teams pull back to perimeter positions. Maintain observation only, no engagement, without my direct authorization. Wonder Woman's response came sharp with disapproval. You're letting them go. I'm making a tactical assessment. Continue monitoring. Superman out. He turned back to the two travelers. You have 24 hours. Use them to stay invisible. After that, I can't guarantee restraint will remain policy. The girl nodded. The boy had already started walking, hands in pockets, gait suggesting he'd checked out of the conversation entirely. Superman watched them disappear into the industrial maze, knowing he'd just made a decision that would either prove his judgment sound or confirm every fear Wonder Woman had voiced. But he'd made it. And now he had to live with the consequences. He lifted off, ascending above the warehouse district, his comm already filling with Wonder Woman's objections, tactical concerns, protocol violations. He acknowledged none of it, his attention fixed on the two heat signatures below, moving away from civilization, seeking the margins. The regime existed to prevent catastrophe. Superman had just gambled that catastrophe could be avoided through something other than force. Time would tell whether that gamble paid off, or whether mercy once again would prove to be the most dangerous indulgence of all. The regime medical facility occupied 6 floors of what used to be Mercy General. The conversion had been thorough examination rooms, became processing stations, patient wards became holding areas. The entire infrastructure of healing repurposed for assessment and control. Superman stood in the observation deck, watching technicians prepare equipment designed to analyze meta-human physiology without requiring consent. Wonder Woman joined him at the glass. They agreed to come in. They agreed to a conversation. I didn't specify location. Her expression showed carefully controlled disapproval. Deception. That's new for you. Tactical necessity. We need information before we can make informed decisions. He gestured to the monitoring stations below. 20 minutes of scans, basic biological workup, threat assessment. Then we have the actual conversation. And if they refuse, then we have baseline data to work from when containment becomes necessary. Wonder Woman studied him with the attention of someone measuring distance from principle to pragmatism. You let them walk away yesterday. Told them they had freedom if they stayed invisible. This is the opposite of that promise. I told them they had 24 hours. It's been 19. I'm using the time I bought. Superman turned from the window. You were right. We can't let unknowns remain unknown. But we also can't treat every mystery as hostile until proven otherwise. That's exactly what we should do. It's what keeps cities from burning. The alert chimed. Both targets approaching the facility entrance. Superman straightened his posture, the unconscious adjustment of someone preparing to sell a fiction. Let me handle the initial contact. Keep security minimal, but ready. He descended to the reception area, arriving as the doors opened. The girl entered first, her wariness evident in every measured step. The boy followed, looking around the facility with the enthusiasm of someone touring a DM5. "Thank you for coming," Superman said, extending his hand. The girl shook it briefly. The boy ignored the gesture entirely. "You said you could help us find a way home." The girl's directness cut through the pleasantries. "What did you mean?" "We have resources. Technology beyond what most governments possess. Dimensional scanning equipment, theoretical physicists who specialize in quantum mechanics and multiverse theory." All true. All phrased to suggest cooperation while implying no obligation. But first we need to understand what we're working with. He gestured toward the elevator. "If you'll follow me, I can introduce you to the team." The girl glanced at the boy. Some silent exchange occurred, ending with the slightest shrug. She turned back to Superman. "Lead on." The elevator descended 2 floors, opening into a corridor lined with examination rooms. Superman maintained casual conversation, asking questions designed to build profile data, where they'd been, how long they'd been traveling, what methods they'd tried for returning home. The girl answered selectively. The boy said nothing. They reached a suite with 2 adjacent examination rooms. Superman stopped at the threshold. "The medical team will need to see you separately. Standard procedure for any biological assessment. Different equipment requirements, different protocols." The girl stiffened immediately. "No, we stay together. It's purely logistical. The scans require—" "I don't care what they require." Her voice hardened. "We don't separate. That's non-negotiable." Superman kept his expression neutral, the face of reasonable authority confronting unreasonable stubbornness. "I understand your concern. But the equipment configurations aren't designed for simultaneous dual occupancy. It's a technical limitation, not a security measure. Then we'll take turns. One goes first while the other watches. The scans need to run in parallel for comparative analysis." The lie came easier than it should have. 15 minutes each. Then you're back together and we can discuss the results. The boy spoke for the first time since entering the facility. She said no. His tone carried no aggression, no emphasis. Just fact stated with the weight of natural law. Superman felt the temperature in the corridor drop perceptibly, though no environmental controls had changed. "I'm trying to help you, but I need your cooperation. You need data." The girl took a half-step forward, positioning herself between Superman and the boy. "You need to categorize us, measure us, understand how we work, so you can determine how to control us. This isn't about helping us get home. This is about making sure we're not threats. Those 2 things aren't mutually exclusive. I can help you and ensure public safety by separating us. By putting us in rooms where we can't see each other, can't verify the other is safe, can't prevent whatever comes next." Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd had this conversation before in different contexts with different authorities. "We've seen this pattern. Protective custody, temporary measures, necessary precautions. It's always the same script with different actors." Superman maintained his calm. This was the pivot point where gentle guidance either succeeded or required harder measures. "I gave you my word yesterday. That word still holds. But cooperation requires trust from both sides. Trust would be keeping your actual word, the one about letting us stay invisible. Instead, you brought us to a medical facility under false pretenses." The girl gestured to the corridor, the examination rooms, the observation windows that were obviously one-way glass. "You think we can't recognize a containment protocol when we see one?" The boy had moved slightly during the exchange, not closer, not aggressive, just present in a way that made Superman's tactical awareness spike, like standing near heavy machinery harmless when stationary catastrophic if activated. "Last chance," Superman said, voice still controlled. Work with me voluntarily, or I invoke protective custody protocols, and we proceed anyway. There it is. The girl's laugh carried no humor. The truth under the diplomacy. Do what we want, or we'll make you. I'm trying to prevent a situation where force becomes necessary. You're creating that situation. We came here in good faith. You lied to get us contained. Now you're threatening us when we won't comply with imprisonment. You're calling medical assessment. Superman's comm activated Wonder Woman's voice encrypted. Superman, we're reading escalating tension. Should I deploy containment teams? He should have said yes. Should have activated protocols designed for exactly this scenario. But something in the girl's eyes stopped him. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. She'd been through variations of this conversation before, possibly many times, and she knew exactly how it would end. The boy noticed the pause, the micro-expression of someone receiving information through hidden communication. His gaze shifted to the ceiling, probably tracking where backup would enter from. Not preparing to fight. Just noting exits, calculating vectors, the unconscious habits of someone accustomed to being hunted. Superman made the decision. Proceed with separation protocol. Medical team standing by. 2 doors open simultaneously at either end of the corridor. Security personnel emerged not aggressive, but positioned. 6 in total, enhanced armor, non-lethal compliance equipment. Overwhelming presence designed to communicate futility of resistance. The girl's expression shifted from frustration to anger. This is a mistake. It's a necessity. Superman nodded to the team leader. Subject 1 to examination room A. Subject 2 to room B. Standard medical restraints, minimum force. The security team moved with practiced efficiency. 2 approached the girl, professional courtesy masking compulsion. She didn't resist, but her voice carried across the corridor. Yogiri, don't. The boy hadn't moved. Just watched the security personnel close in with the same tired disinterest he'd shown everything else. One of them reached for his arm, the standard escort grip designed to guide without pain. Sir, please come with. Yogiri's voice cut through the professional patter. Let go. Sir, we need you to. Let go. The security officer's hand remained on Yogiri's arm for exactly 1 more second. Then the man collapsed, armor clattering against tile, the sound echoing down the corridor like a gunshot. The other 5 personnel froze. Training said to advance to complete the objective, to maintain formation. Survival instinct said to step back, to reassess, to recognize when the threat matrix had fundamentally shifted. Superman moved faster than human perception, crossing the distance to interpose himself between Yogiri and the remaining security team. Not aggressive. Protective. Trying to prevent escalation while still containing the situation. Stand down. Everyone stand down. The girl had broken free from her escorts during the confusion. She positioned herself next to Yogiri, her expression a mixture of frustration and vindication. We tried to warn you. We tried to leave peacefully. But you couldn't accept that. Could you? Had to control it. Had to contain it. Had to make sure the unknown became known on your terms. Superman studied the fallen officer. Breathing. Pulse present. Unconscious, but alive. The same precise cessation as the checkpoint deaths, but calibrated differently. A warning instead of termination. That precision terrified him more than random lethality would have. You could have killed him. We could have killed all of them. The girl's voice held no pride in the statement, just tired accuracy. We could have killed you. But we didn't. Because unlike your regime, we don't view force as the default solution to every problem. Superman's comm erupted with Wonder Woman's voice, all pretense of encryption abandoned. I'm coming in. Contain them now, or clear the area. He held up one hand, the gesture for standby that his team would recognize. To the girl and Yogiri, he said, this doesn't have to escalate further. It already has. The moment you lied to get us here, the moment you tried to separate us, the moment you sent armed personnel to force compliance, it escalated. The girl moved toward the corridor exit, Yogiri following without apparent concern for the security team, still frozen in tactical uncertainty. "We're leaving. You can let us, or you can send more people to die. Your choice." Superman shifted position to block their path. Not combat stance, not yet, but ready. "I can't let you leave. Not after this." "Then stop us." The words hung in the air like a challenge, but the girl's tone carried no bravado, just exhausted certainty. She knew he would try, knew what would happen when he did, and some part of her seemed almost sad about the inevitability. Superman's mind raced through tactical options. Speed advantage, he could move faster than they could react. Strength advantage, he could physically restrain them before they completed whatever mechanism triggered their ability. Durability advantage, he could absorb whatever they attempted and maintain containment. All the advantages, all the power, all the certainty that had rebuilt the world after Metropolis. And looking into Yogiri's tired eyes, Superman realized none of it mattered. Because this wasn't a fight. This was a boundary. And boundaries didn't care about power differentials. Wonder Woman's voice crackled again. "Superman, I'm 10 seconds out. Clear or engage." He had to decide. Let them leave and accept that the regime couldn't control every variable. Or force containment and discover whether his invulnerability extended to whatever had dropped 3 trained personnel without visible effort. The old Superman would have trusted, would have stepped aside, honored his original promise, believed in redemption. The current Superman knew better. He moved faster than thought, closing the distance, hands reaching to immobilize through sheer physical superiority. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. Yogiri's didn't change at all. Superman's hands passed through empty air, not because they dodged. Because halfway through his motion, Superman's body decided it didn't want to complete the action. Every muscle screaming cessation, every nerve firing abort protocols, his own survival instinct, overriding tactical decision. He stumbled the first uncontrolled motion in years, his invulnerability meaningless against something that didn't attack the body. The corridor doors exploded inward. Wonder Woman entered at combat speed. Lasso of Truth already deployed her warrior instincts, reading the scene instantly. Superman on the ground. Security team down. 2 targets moving toward exit. She struck without hesitation. The lasso caught the girl mid-stride, golden rope coiling with the precision of decades of combat experience. Binding, controlling the artifact's power, compelling truth and compliance from anyone it touched. Yogiri stopped walking. The temperature dropped. Wonder Woman felt it immediately. The wrongness in the air, reality itself flinching away from what came next. She'd fought God's monsters, embodiments of concepts that predated humanity. She knew the taste of genuine threat. This was different. This was absolute. Yogiri turned to face her. No anger. No determination. Just someone profoundly tired of being provoked, looking at the latest person who refused to understand a simple request. Let her go. Wonder Woman had faced down Ares himself, had stood against Darkseid's wrath, had never yielded to a threat in her centuries of existence. She didn't intend to start now. You're both under protective custody of the regime. Surrender peacefully or... She didn't finish the sentence. The lasso went slack, not because Wonder Woman released it, but because her hands simply stopped gripping. Her entire body locked, every Amazonian muscle frozen, mid-motion consciousness still present, but control utterly absent. She remained upright. A statue of warfare interrupted her last thought. Before darkness, a simple recognition. This wasn't a fight she could win, because it wasn't a fight at all. The girl pulled free of the loosened lasso, rubbing her wrists where the artifact had touched. "I'm sorry," she said to Wonder Woman's frozen form. "We really did try to avoid this." Superman forced himself upright, every instinct screaming that he'd just touched something lethal. The girl and Yogiri were already moving toward the exit, stepping over unconscious security personnel with the careful courtesy of people navigating obstacles they regretted creating. "Wait," Superman managed, voice rough. They paused. The girl turned back. "This proves you're a threat. This proves we're people who don't like being imprisoned. She gestured to the fallen personnel, to Wonder Woman's locked form. None of them are dead. None of them are even injured. We could have killed everyone in this building, but we didn't. Because we're not interested in your war, your control, or your certainty that every unknown must be contained. Then what do you want? To leave. That's all we've ever wanted. To leave, find a way home, and never think about this world again. The girl's exhaustion bled through every word. But you won't let us. Because you can't accept that some things exist outside your framework. Yogiri had already exited the corridor. The girl followed, calling back without looking. Your people wake up in about 5 minutes. When they do, tell them to stop following us. Tell them to delete our files, forget our faces, and pretend we never existed. Because if you force another confrontation, we won't be able to keep calibrating restraint. Then she was gone. Footsteps fading into the facility's depths. Superman lay on the cold tile listening to Wonder Woman's shallow breathing. The unconscious security team, the absolute silence of a containment protocol that had failed completely. His comm activated. Multiple channels simultaneously. Reports flooding in from the entire facility. Power fluctuations, security breaches, personnel down across 3 floors. Not from fighting. From proximity to whatever had just walked through their most secure medical complex, like it was made of morning fog. He forced himself upright, muscle control returning gradually. Crossed to Wonder Woman, checking her vitals. Stable. Breathing. Locked in whatever state Yogiri had imposed. 5 minutes, the girl had said. Superman waited. Counting seconds, watching his most powerful ally, frozen by something that shouldn't exist, reconsidering every assumption that had rebuilt the world after Metropolis. At 4 minutes and 47 seconds, Wonder Woman gasped back to consciousness. She looked at Superman, saw the answer in his expression, and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say. They had tried control, tried containment, tried every protocol the regime existed to enforce, and failed completely, not through being outfought, through being irrelevant. Superman helped Wonder Woman to her feet. Around them, security personnel began stirring confusion, giving way to reports, crystallizing into the single question every system demands. What do we do now? Superman didn't have an answer. For the first time since founding the regime, he genuinely didn't know. The industrial sector had been dead for 3 years, casualty of economic reorganization under the new order. Buildings stood hollow, their windows dark, machinery silent, behind chain-link perimeters. Yogiri sat on a loading dock, watching sodium lamps flicker against gathering dusk. Tomochika paced nearby, her frustration evident in each measured step. We can't keep doing this. Yogiri didn't respond. He'd learned that Tomochika's statements sometimes didn't require acknowledgement, just space to exist in. Every time we try to cooperate, they pull the same routine. Promises, then separation, then imprisonment dressed up as help. She stopped pacing, turned to face him. I'm starting to think there's no peaceful resolution here. There isn't. The certainty in his voice made her pause. You sound sure. They can't stop, it is what they are. Yogiri gestured vaguely at the city beyond the industrial wasteland. Power structures always need to control variables. We're variables. So they'll keep trying until we're categorized or gone. Gone meaning dead or contained. Same result from their perspective. Tomochika resumed pacing. So what do? We can't fight an entire government. And even if we could, that's not... She cut herself off, the unspoken ending obvious. That's not what you do. That's not who you are. Yogiri stood stretching muscles that had been motionless too long. We find someone who understands boundaries. Someone who knows when to stop pushing. You think that person exists in this world? Before Yogiri could answer, the air pressure changed. Subtle but distinct, the displacement that preceded something massive moving very fast. He looked up as Superman descended, landing 30 meters away with the careful deliberation of someone approaching volatile ordnance. We need to talk. Tomochika positioned herself instinctively between Superman and Yogiri. You said that last time. Then you tried to cage us. I made a mistake. Superman raised his hands, the universal gesture of non-aggression. I approached this wrong. Treated you as problems to solve instead of people to understand. And now? Yogiri's voice carried no hostility, just curiosity about what script they'd moved to. Now I'm asking, what do you need? The question hung in the cooling air. Tomochika glanced at Yogiri, reading something in his posture that Superman couldn't parse. We need passage to someone who understands dimensional barriers. Magic, technology, whatever works. Tomochika kept her tone neutral. We need access without strings, help without imprisonment, and we need you to stop treating us as security risks that require management. Superman nodded slowly. I can arrange the first two. The third is harder. Why? Because you are a security risk. No hostility in the statement, just acknowledgement of reality. Not by intent, maybe not even by choice, but by capability. What happened at the medical facility happened because you violated your word. Tomochika's voice hardened. You promised safety if we stayed invisible. Then you lured us in under false pretenses. You created that situation, not us. I know, and Wonder Woman is still processing what it means to be. Interrupted that completely. Superman took a single step forward, movement calibrated to show intent without aggression. But you have to understand from our perspective. You're an unknown force that neutralizes personnel without visible mechanism. Every instinct we have says that can't be allowed to exist outside supervision. Then your instincts are wrong. Yogiri spoke quietly, but Superman stopped mid-step. We're not forces. We're travelers. The difference matters. Does it? When 3 people are unconscious and Wonder Woman spent 5 minutes locked in her own body, does the intent really change the outcome? Yes. Tomochika's certainty cut through the diplomatic language. Because we calibrated every response. Could have killed. Didn't. Could have escalated. Didn't. We defended a boundary you chose to cross. That's not aggression. It's enforcement of explicitly stated limits. Superman's jaw tightened, the micro-expression of someone confronting logic they couldn't easily refute. And the next time someone crosses those limits, what happens when it's not trained personnel but civilians who get too close? Civilians don't try to imprison people. They don't separate companions against their will. They don't deploy armed teams for compliance. Yogiri sat back down on the loading dock, the conversation apparently exhausting his interest. Your question doesn't make sense. Civilians panic, make mistakes, accidents happen. Then they learn. Same as your soldiers learned. Same as Wonder Woman learned. Yogiri looked directly at Superman for the first time since the conversation began. Everyone learns eventually. It's just a matter of how expensive the lesson is. Superman felt something shift in his chest. The recognition that this wasn't negotiation, wasn't even dialogue, really. This was explanation of established fact delivered with the enthusiasm of someone reading warranty documentation. His calm activated. Wonder Woman's voice carefully controlled. Superman, we have sensor data showing. I know, I'm handling it. By talking, that worked brilliantly last time. Superman muted the channel. To Yogiri and Tomochika, I can connect you with specialists, people who might help with dimensional barriers. But I need assurance you won't. The explosion cut him off. Not close, but close enough 3 blocks west, the distinctive percussion of military ordnance. Superman's enhanced hearing caught the secondary sounds immediately, structural collapse screaming the chaos signature of uncontrolled destruction. He turned toward the blast, every instinct demanding he respond. Stopped himself. Looked back at the 2 travelers. Don't move. I'll be back in. Go! Tomochika waved him off. We're not children. We don't need supervision. Superman launched skyward, the ethical calculus simple. Lives in immediate danger outweighed monitoring two people who demonstrated precise control. He'd resumed the conversation after handling the crisis. The mistake was assuming the explosion was coincidental. Tomochika watched Superman disappear into the urban canopy. That was too convenient. Yogiri stood again, his earlier lethargy replaced with focused attention. Someone's testing variables. Someone with access to military explosives and knowledge of Superman's response patterns. Tomochika scanned the industrial sector, looking for movement in the shadows that had suddenly grown deeper. We should leave. Too late. The air shimmered. Not heat distortion, something fundamental warping reality, adjusting to accommodate intrusion. A figure coalesced from the distortion, tall and armored, carrying the weight of ages in posture alone. Ares smiled. Finally. A conversation without the Boy Scouts' interference. Tomochika stepped back, positioning near Yogiri. We're not interested in whatever you're selling. You don't even know what I'm offering. Ares moved closer, each step deliberate. I'm the god of war, child. I know conflict in all its forms. And what you two represent, that's the most elegant conflict I've seen in centuries. We're not in conflict with anyone. We're trying to leave. Exactly. You're trying to leave a world that won't let you. That's conflict. Ares gestured broadly at the city. Superman wants to contain you. His regime wants to categorize you. The rebels want to use you. Everyone wants something from you, except the one thing you actually want to be left alone. Yogiri hadn't moved, but his attention was complete now. Get to the point. I can open a path home. Tear a hole in dimensional barriers that their technology can't touch, their magic can't reach. I can give you exactly what you want. Ares' smile widened. For a price? Which is simple. Before you go in, Superman. Permanently. The silence stretched. Tomochika found her voice first. You want us to assassinate him. I want you to remove the tyrant strangling this world's natural evolution. Superman has imposed peace through power order, through fear. He's broken the fundamental cycle of conflict and resolution that drives human progress. Ares circled them slowly, a predator's evaluation. War isn't chaos. It's pressure. It's the force that separates the viable from the obsolete. And Superman has eliminated that pressure entirely. No. Yogiri's response was immediate and flat. You didn't even consider the offer. Don't need to. We don't kill for ideology. Ares laughed, genuine amusement coloring the sound. You killed 3 soldiers for touching your companion. You rendered Wonder Woman unconscious for trying to restrain you. Don't pretend principle when it's really just preference. Those were boundaries. Enforcement of stated limits. Not service to someone else's agenda. Yogiri met the god's eyes without flinching. Find a different weapon. I'm not looking for a weapon. I'm offering liberation. You get to go home. The world gets freed from Superman's suffocating certainty. Everyone wins. Everyone. Except Superman. He chose this path. Made himself the ultimate authority, declared himself judge of acceptable risk. He's earned whatever comes. Ares stopped circling, facing Yogiri directly. And you know I'm right. You've seen how he operates, the lies, the control, the assumption that his judgment supersedes everyone else's autonomy. He's exactly the kind of power you should oppose. Tomochika cut in before Yogiri could respond. We oppose people who try to control us. That includes you. I'm not trying to control you. I'm proposing an exchange. Your freedom for his life. You set off that explosion, drew Superman away so you could make this pitch without interference. Tomochika's voice carried certainty. You're manipulating variables, engineering situations. That's control. Ares's expression shifted, amusement, fading to calculation. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. But the offer stands. Help me end Superman's reign, and I'll personally guarantee your passage home. And if we refuse, then you stay trapped in a world that will never stop hunting you. Superman won't rest. Wonder Woman won't forgive. The regime will keep escalating until they find something that works, or everyone's dead trying. Ares leaned forward slightly. I'm offering you escape. All it costs is one tyrant's life. Yogiri stood the motion, drawing immediate attention. You're assuming we can't leave without your help. Can you? Don't know yet. Haven't found all the options. Yogiri walked past Ares, heading toward the industrial sector's exit. But we'll find them without killing for strangers. Ares didn't move to block him. Didn't threaten. Just watched with the patient regard of something that had witnessed civilizations rise and fall. You'll reconsider. When Superman's forces corner you when the options narrow to compliance or escalation, you'll remember this conversation. His voice carried across the empty space between them. And when you're ready to talk seriously, I'll be waiting. Tomochika hurried after Yogiri, glancing back once to see Ares still standing motionless, a statue of inevitability in the fading light. They walked 3 blocks in silence before she spoke. He's not wrong about Superman. Doesn't matter. It matters if we're trapped here. If there's no other way, then we find another way. Yogiri's tone allowed no argument. We don't kill people because gods ask nicely. He's a god of war. He won't ask nicely next time. The next time will be different. Tomochika wanted to press the point to explore the logic that might justify what Ares proposed to consider, whether Superman's authoritarianism warranted exactly the response Ares suggested. But looking at Yogiri's expression closed final unbending, she recognized the futility. Some boundaries weren't negotiable. They reached a transit station, abandoned like everything else in the sector. Tomochika checked the route maps, looking for paths that avoided surveillance zones. Behind them, the explosion's aftermath continued, sirens, emergency response, Superman's regime, demonstrating efficient crisis management. We need help, she said quietly. Real help. Someone who can navigate dimensional mechanics without demanding we become weapons first. Batman mentioned something before Superman arrived. Yogiri leaned against a support pillar, the brief surge of alertness fading back to his default state. Said we needed to avoid contact. Implied he had alternatives. Batman works for Superman. Batman works for Batman. That was obvious even in the 5 seconds I saw him. Tomochika considered the distinction. So we find Batman. Hope he's more interested in solving problems than controlling them. We find whoever he mentioned. The tower. What tower? Yogiri shrugged. Don't know. But he seemed to think it mattered. Across the city, in a command center that had once been a symbol of justice, Superman reviewed the explosion site. Controlled detonation, 0 casualties, suspiciously perfect timing. Wonder Woman stood beside him, her earlier incapacitation a fresh memory neither discussed. Ares, she spoke with absolute certainty. Probably. He's trying to weaponize them. Get them to do what we can't end you permanently. Superman nodded, the pieces arranging themselves into familiar patterns. He needs conflict. The regime eliminated too much chaos, so he manufactures it. And those two are his latest tool. Wonder Woman gestured to the tracker display, now empty. They'd lost the targets immediately after Superman's departure. We need to eliminate them before Ares succeeds, or we need to ensure Ares fails without creating more martyrs. Superman turned from the displays. I want Batman brought in. Quietly. No official channels. Batman's been helping the insurgency. Batman's been playing all sides while pretending neutrality. Time to force his hand. Superman moved toward the command center's exit. If anyone knows how to contain something unconventional, it's him. Wonder Woman started to object, stopped herself. The logic was sound, even if the source was compromised. Batman's tactical mind, aimed properly, could solve problems that raw power couldn't touch. And if he refuses, he won't. Because he knows what's coming if we don't solve this quietly. Superman's expression hardened. Ares wants war. We're going to deny him that satisfaction. In the industrial sector, Yogiri and Tomochika had already disappeared into the urban maze, following intuition toward something called a tower, guided by nothing more than a single overheard reference and the diminishing hope that someone somewhere understood when to stop pushing. Behind them, gods and governments aligned plans within plans, spiraling toward the collision that everyone recognized was inevitable, except the two people at the center who wanted nothing more than to go home and never think about any of this again. The city's lights flickered against encroaching night. Somewhere a god of war smiled, and reality itself began preparing for what came next. The safe house existed in the quantum space between official records and actual geography, 3 levels beneath a condemned subway station accessible only through maintenance tunnels the regime had catalogued, then forgotten. Batman stood before a wall of monitors, each screen tracking different variables in a situation spiraling beyond anyone's design. Zatanna materialized behind him, without warning, the air folding to accommodate her arrival. "You called. This better be worth interrupting my evening." 2 unknowns. Meta-human capability that neutralizes targets through unknown vectors. Superman tried custody, failed. Wonder Woman attempted restraint, currently recovering from 5 minutes of complete motor control loss. Batman pulled up the medical facility footage. They're not hostile. They're reactive. And the regime is about to force a reaction that destroys everything. Zatanna watched the recording. Yogiri's absolute stillness, Wonder Woman, frozen mid-lunge, the careful calibration evident in every non-death. "You want to hide them. I want them removed from the equation before Ares finishes what he started." Ares is involved. Batman switched feeds, showing thermal analysis of the industrial sector explosion. Signature matches his previous work. Timing suggests manipulation separating Superman from the targets to make an approach. Unknown what was offered, but both parties departed without agreement. So the god of war wants them for something. Superman wants them contained, and you want them gone. What do they want? To leave? To go home? To stop being variables in other people's equations? Batman closed the feeds, turned to face Zatanna directly. Can it be done dimensional transit for 2 people with unknown origins? Zatanna's expression shifted from skepticism to consideration. Theoretically, yes. Practically, I'd need the tower's resources, Fate's expertise, Constantine's knowledge of dimensional mechanics. She paused. And their cooperation. The unknowns. Everyone. This isn't a spell you cast. It's an expedition you guide. They'd have to participate willingly, trust the process, accept that magic operates on rules that don't care about their preferences. They don't trust authority. Smart of them. Zatanna conjured a chair from ambient magic, sat without ceremony. So how do you propose I gain cooperation from people who've learned that every offer comes with invisible strings? Batman was silent for 3 seconds, his version of prolonged consideration. You don't. I do. You're regime adjacent. They'll assume compromise. They'll assume competence. I prevented Superman's initial strike, warned them through back channels. Haven't participated in any custody attempts. Batman pulled up a different display showing routes through the city's forgotten infrastructure. They're looking for the tower. Constantine mentioned it during Wonder Woman's debriefing, probably assuming the reference was too obscure to matter, but one of them heard. Constantine has a mouth that operates independent of his brain. Zatanna stood the conjured chair dissolving. So you want to intercept them before they stumble into something actually dangerous? Convince them to trust magical strangers and shepherd them through a dimensional transit that might not work. Yes? You realize this could fail catastrophically. I realize doing nothing fails with certainty. Batman began shutting down the monitors, the safe house reverting to dormancy. Superman will escalate. Wonder Woman wants elimination disguised as necessity. Ares needs conflict. Every force acting on these 2 pushes toward violence. Someone has to push toward resolution. Zatanna studied him with the attention of someone reading subtext. You're not doing this for them. I'm doing this because the alternative is watching Superman become everything he swore he'd prevent. The moment he decides elimination is necessary, the moment he justifies murder of inconvenient innocents, the regime completes its transformation from protection to tyranny. Batman moved toward the exit. These two are the test case. How we handle them determines what we've actually become. And if they refuse the tower, if they decide magic is just another cage, then I step aside. But I give them the option first. They emerged from the safe house into tunnels that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Zatanna followed Batman through the underground maze, her boots navigating debris with practiced ease. You've thought about this carefully. I've thought about little else since the medical facility. Batman's voice echoed slightly in the confined space. Superman's facing something he can't intimidate, can't overpower, can't reason with through displays of strength. It's breaking his fundamental model of how power works. He's faced magical opponents before, who operated within frameworks he understood. Enemies with goals, weaknesses, patterns he could exploit. Batman stopped at a junction consulting a device that tracked signatures the regime's sensors couldn't parse. These two don't have goals beyond escape. Don't have weaknesses beyond each other. Don't follow patterns because they're not playing the game. That's what's breaking him. Zatanna processed the implication. You think Superman's going to snap? I think he's approaching a decision point. And I'd rather these two be gone before he reaches it. The tracking device pulsed. Batman altered course, moving with a silent efficiency that had made him a ghost in Gotham's darkness. Zatanna matched his pace, her magic muffling their approach. They found Yogiri and Tomochika in a maintenance sub-level, studying a junction box like it held cosmic secrets. The girl looked up as Batman emerged from the shadows, her posture shifting immediately to defensive readiness. You're the one who warned us? I am. Batman stopped at a distance that communicated non-aggression. You're looking for the tower. I can take you there. Yogiri hadn't moved, his attention still fixed on the junction box's faded labels. Why? Because Superman's running out of diplomatic options. Ares is manufacturing scenarios that force escalation, and you're caught between forces that don't care about your actual objectives. Batman gestured to Zatanna. She can help you leave. Not to another cell, not to another processing center. Actually leave. Tomochika's skepticism was evident. Everyone says they can help. Then come the conditions. The condition is you participate in good faith. Dimensional transit requires cooperation from the travelers. No deception, no hidden leverage. You either trust the process or you don't. Zatanna stepped forward, her presence carrying the weight of centuries. I'm Zatanna. I manipulate reality through linguistic inversion. I work with people who specialize in dimensional mechanics. And I'm offering exactly one thing, a genuine attempt to send you home. In exchange for what? Your absence. You leave, Superman stops hunting variables he can't control. Ares loses his newest provocation, and everyone gets to avoid the bloodbath that's currently scheduling itself. Zatanna's directness seemed to surprise Tomochika. I'm not pretending altruism. This benefits me by preventing a war I'd have to participate in. Yogiri finally looked up from the junction box. Where's this tower? Outside conventional space. It exists in a pocket dimension anchored to reality, but not subject to it. The regime can't reach it. Superman can't breach it, and it's where people go when they need to be somewhere else. Batman pulled up a map on his gauntlet display showing nothing useful. I can guide you there, but you walk in voluntarily or not at all. What's the catch? No catch, no leverage. You meet the specialists, they assess whether dimensional transit is viable. You decide whether to proceed. At any point you can leave. Zatanna created a small portal just large enough to show a glimpse of somewhere else, stone walls. golden light the aesthetic of spaces built for purposes beyond mortal concern. That's the tower. It's real, it's reachable, and it's your best chance. Or Tomochika looked at Yogiri, some silent exchange occurring in the space between them. She turned back to Batman. You're asking us to trust strangers who wield power we don't understand, in a location we can't escape from, based on promises that everyone else has broken. Yes, the bluntness seemed to short-circuit her building argument. That's it, just yes. I could offer reassurances, cite my reputation, explain my methodology, demonstrate prior good faith. Batman's voice remained level. But you've heard variations of that script from Superman. So instead I'll say, yes, I'm asking you to trust strangers. And you have to decide if that risk is worse than staying here while forces align against you. Yogiri stood brushing dust from his clothes with the care of someone who'd been sitting too long. How far is it? 30 minutes through routes the regime doesn't monitor. And if this is another cage, another processing center with better marketing, then you'll handle it the same way you've handled everything else. Batman met Yogiri's eyes without flinching. I've seen the footage. I know what you're capable of. I'm not offering this because I think I can control you. I'm offering it because letting you wander until Superman or Ares force a confrontation serves no one. Tomochika started to speak, stopped, then tried again. You're different from the others. I'm practical. Superman believes power solves problems. Wonder Woman believes strength creates order. I believe sometimes the best solution is helping people leave before the situation detonates. Batman deactivated his gauntlet display. So, yes or no? The offer expires in 60 seconds. Yogiri looked at Tomochika. She shrugged the gesture, conveying equal parts resignation and desperate hope. He turned back to Batman. Lead the way. The route took them through infrastructure that predated the regime by decades. Access tunnels, maintenance corridors, the skeleton of a city that existed beneath its skin. Batman navigated without hesitation, Zatanna following while maintaining spells that bent attention away from their passage. Tomochika walked close to Yogiri, her voice low. This could be a trap. Everything could be a trap. That's not reassuring. Not trying to reassure. Stating fact. Yogiri's tone carried the same flatness it always did. Either we trust someone eventually, or we stay here forever. This option seems least terrible. Least terrible is a pretty low bar. It's the only bar we have. Batman led them to what appeared to be a dead-end concrete wall. No markings. Nothing to distinguish it from thousands of identical surfaces throughout the city. Zatanna approached, speaking words that reversed themselves, reality bending to accommodate linguistic paradox. The wall stopped being solid. Beyond it, space existed differently. Not a room, not a corridor, but a transitional zone where geometry accepted suggestions rather than rules. Golden light emanated from no visible source, casting shadows that didn't quite align with the objects creating them. The threshold, Zatanna explained. Crossing requires intent. You have to want to enter. Tomochika stared at the impossible space. What happens if we don't want it enough? You bounce off and feel mildly embarrassed. The tower's defensive mechanisms are thorough, not cruel. Yogiri stepped forward without hesitation, crossing from concrete tunnel to golden threshold as if the transition was mundane as doorways. He looked back at Tomochika. It's fine. She followed that simple reassurance, apparently sufficient. Batman and Zatanna entered last, the wall re-solidifying behind them, with the finality of bridges burned. The interior of the tower defied conventional architecture. Spaces connected through logic that had nothing to do with physics rooms adjacent to other rooms. Despite being levels apart, staircases that descended into higher floors. Windows showing views that couldn't coexist spatially. A figure waited in what might charitably be called the entrance hall. Tall golden helmet obscuring features presence, radiating the weight of cosmic awareness. Dr. Fate stood motionless, regarding the newcomers with attention that suggested he'd been expecting them. The displaced ones. His voice carried harmonics that implied multiple speakers. You seek passage beyond this dimensional boundary. Tomochika's defensive posture returned immediately. We seek information about passage. There's a difference. Indeed. Information I possess. The question is whether you possess the fortitude to hear it. Before anyone could respond, another figure emerged from a doorway that hadn't existed moments earlier. Rumpled coat, permanent stubble, the bearing of someone who'd seen too much and metabolized it through sarcasm and alcohol. John Constantine lit a cigarette despite the obviously enclosed space. Bloody hell, Zatanna. When you said you were bringing tourists, you didn't mention they were the walking apocalypse everyone's chattering about. Constantine, Zatanna's tone carried warning. Behave. I'm always behaved. It's my natural state. He studied Yogiri with the attention of someone evaluating livestock. So you're the thing that's got Superman's cape in a twist. Don't look like much. I'm not. Yogiri's response was immediate and bored. Right. Just a harmless lad who happens to switch off people like you're flipping a light. Constantine took a drag, exhaled smoke that seemed to carry more substance than normal. I've dealt with demons, angels the occasional elder god. You know what they all have in common? They want something. Power, worship, chaos, order doesn't matter. They want. You, though, you're strange. Can't figure out what you want. Can't. To leave. Everyone wants to leave somewhere. Question is whether you want it bad enough to trust people you've got every reason to doubt. Constantine gestured vaguely at the tower's impossible geometry. This place, it's neutral ground. Fate here doesn't care about politics. I'm too cynical to bother with manipulation, and Zatanna's motivations are refreshingly transparent. But it's still magic, still power. You can't control, still strangers asking you to cooperate with forces you don't understand. Tomochika cut in. Is there a point to this speech, or are you just practicing your intimidation routine? Constantine grinned. I like her. She's got spine. He sobered slightly. Point is, we can help you. But you've got to actually participate, not just stand there waiting for the other shoe to drop. Magic isn't technology. It doesn't work if you're fighting it the whole time. Dr. Fate moved closer, his presence creating pressure in the air itself. Your origins lie beyond this dimensional framework. The barriers separating you from home are not spatial, but existential. Standard transit methods will fail, but non-standard methods might work. Tomochika's hope was carefully restrained. Possibly. I would need to examine the dimensional signature you carry, trace the resonance back to your origin point, and construct a pathway that reality will accept. Fate paused, the helmet's eye sockets somehow conveying consideration, despite showing nothing. The process is invasive. It requires I touch the fundamental pattern of what you are. Many find this uncomfortable. Yogiri looked at Tomochika, then back to Fate. Will it hurt her? No. Discomfort is psychological, not physical. But I will know things about you that you may prefer remained private. Don't care about privacy, care about safety. Then you have my word. No harm will come to either of you within these walls. The tower exists outside the conflicts you've encountered. Here you are, neither prisoners nor weapons. Simply travelers seeking assistance. Constantine snorted. Don't oversell it, Fate. Tower's neutral, sure, but neutral doesn't mean safe. It means we don't take sides. If you start trouble, neutrality ends real quick. We don't start trouble. Yogiri's voice carried absolute certainty. We finish it when it starts with us. Different thing. Fair distinction. Constantine crushed out his cigarette against nothing, the stub vanishing before it could fall. So, you in or you walking? Because Batman's right about one thing, staying out there gets messier by the hour. Superman's building toward a decision no one's going to like, and Ares is orchestrating scenarios that push everyone toward violence. You're the spark they're all trying to aim at their preferred kindling. Tomochika looked around the tower's impossible interior, at the three figures offering help with varying degrees of sincerity, at Batman standing silent in the background. She looked at Yogiri. Your call. Yogiri was quiet for several seconds. Then, we stay, for now. Try this examination. See if it leads anywhere. Dr. Fate inclined his head. Acceptable. Follow me. He turned, walking toward a staircase that curved in directions stairs shouldn't manage. Yogiri and Tomochika followed Tomochika, glancing back once to make sure retreat remained possible. Batman. Zatanna and Constantine watched them ascend. Think they'll bolt? Constantine asked quietly. Probably. Zatanna crossed her arms. But they'll bolt after getting answers. That's better than bolting blind. Batman said nothing, his attention fixed on the two figures disappearing into the tower's depths. He'd done what he could, removed them from the immediate equation, given them options Superman couldn't corrupt, and Ares couldn't weaponize. What happened next depended entirely on whether dimensional mechanics could solve what power had only complicated, and whether two exhausted travelers could trust one more time without that trust being betrayed. In the tower's upper chambers, Dr. Fate prepared space for examination that would either open a path home or confirm what everyone suspected, that some displacements couldn't be reversed. Some distances were permanent, and some travelers were stuck with the worlds they'd fallen into. Outside in the city, neither traveler had chosen. Superman received word that the targets had disappeared completely from all tracking systems. Wonder Woman suggested expanded search parameters. Ares smiled, recognizing the moves before they were made, already planning the next provocation. And Batman returned to his safe house, preparing contingencies for the three most likely outcomes, knowing that preparation wouldn't prevent catastrophe, only delay it. The tower hummed with energies older than the conflict outside its walls, indifferent to the forces aligning, concerned only with its eternal purpose, providing sanctuary to those who needed space between themselves and the world. For now, that space held. How long it would last depended on variables even fate couldn't fully predict. But for the first time since arriving in this world, Yogiri and Tomochika had something approximating breathing room. Whether it was enough remained to be seen. The examination chamber occupied a space that Dr. Fate insisted was technically adjacent to reality. Yogiri sat in the center of a circle inscribed with symbols that predated language, while golden light mapped patterns invisible to normal perception. Tomochika watched from outside the markings, her earlier skepticism gradually eroding into cautious optimism. Your dimensional signature is unusual. Fate's voice carried the harmonics of multiple speakers analyzing data simultaneously. Not fragmented, not corrupted. Simply other. As if you originate from a framework with fundamentally different operational principles. Can you trace it back? Tomochika asked. I'm attempting to, but the pathway is obscured by something I've never encountered, a kind of existential static. Not interference, more like incompatibility between your origin's laws and this reality structure. Fate's helmet tilted slightly. Give me time. I need to consult resources the tower maintains for exactly these circumstances. He departed through a doorway that folded space, leaving them alone in the chamber. Yogiri stood stepping out of the circle with visible relief. How do you feel? Tomochika moved closer, checking for signs of the discomfort Fate had warned about. Like I was being read by something that doesn't use words. Yogiri stretched, working out stiffness that was probably psychosomatic. Invasive is accurate, but not painful. And we wait. See if he can actually deliver, or if this is just another delay dressed up as hope. Footsteps echoed in the corridor beyond Constantine's distinctive gait, uneven and purposeful. He appeared in the doorway, bottle in hand. Fate's going to be a while. He gets obsessive when he encounters something new. Constantine offered the bottle. Drink. No, both responded simultaneously. Suit yourselves. More for me. He took a swig, studying them with eyes that had seen too much refuse to look away. You two are curious. Everyone wants something from you. Superman wants control, Ares wants chaos, even Batman wants a solution. But you just want out. It's almost refreshing. Almost. Tomochika's tone carried skepticism. Well, it's also bloody inconvenient. Makes you unpredictable. Can't bargain with people who don't want anything you can offer. Constantine leaned against the doorframe. That's why Ares is going to try again. Gods don't accept rejection, they just change the question until the answer shifts. Yogiri's attention sharpened. You know what he's planning. I know how war deities operate. Ares won't make another polite offer. He'll manufacture scenarios where your boundaries become weapons he can aim. Constantine's voice dropped, losing its casual edge. He'll threaten what you actually protect. Force you into positions where your responses serve his agenda, whether you want them to or not. And you're warning us because Ares winning is bad for literally everyone. Plus, Zatanna would be cross if I let it happen without at least mentioning the danger. Constantine pushed off the doorframe. My advice, stay in the tower until fate cracks your dimensional problem. Don't give Ares another opening. We're not prisoners here, guests, free to leave whenever you want. But leaving puts you back in play. Constantine started to turn away, paused. One more thing. When Ares corners you again, remember he's counting on you being reactive. The move that wins is sometimes the move that feels like surrender. Don't give him the violence he needs. Starve him out instead. He departed before either could respond, leaving them alone with the circle's fading glow and the weight of warning. Tomochika broke the silence first. He's right about Ares. Gods don't accept limits. They just escalate until limits break. Then we don't give him leverage points. We can't hide here forever. Don't need forever. Just until fate finds a path home. Yogiri moved toward the chamber's exit. Come on. Let's find somewhere in this place that doesn't hum with magical residue. They wandered the tower's impossible architecture, eventually finding a room that resembled a library. If libraries existed in fever dreams. Books floated in careful orbits, their pages turning independently of gravity or intent. Tomochika pulled one from its trajectory, opened it to reveal text that rearranged itself based on the reader's comprehension level. I could get used to this place, she admitted. It's bizarre, but at least it's honest about being bizarre. Yogiri had settled into a chair that adjusted itself to his preferred slouch. Better than Metropolis. Better than checkpoints and facilities, and everyone pretending they're helping while preparing cages. You think fate's actually trying to help? Don't know. But he's not lying about the difficulty. That signature reading felt real, like he was genuinely searching for something he didn't understand. Yogiri closed his eyes. We'll know soon enough. Time passed in the tower's non-linear fashion hours, bleeding together without meaningful measurement. Eventually Zatanna found them, her expression carefully neutral. Fate's made progress. He needs both of you for the next phase. They followed her through corridors that rearranged themselves between blinks, arriving at a chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Dr. Fate stood amid the formations, his attention focused on patterns visible only to his enhanced perception. I've traced the signature, he announced without preamble. Your origin exists in a dimensional framework, 7 degrees removed from this reality. The pathway between them isn't closed, it's actively hostile. Something about your home reality's fundamental structure rejects connection to this one. Can you force a connection? Tomochika asked. Force number. Negotiate, possibly. The tower maintains relationships with dimensional brokers entities that facilitate transit across incompatible frameworks. I've contacted one who specializes in hostile barrier navigation. Fate gestured to the crystalline structures. They'll arrive shortly. Be prepared for the air split. Not like Zatanna's portals, clean and controlled. This was violation reality tearing because something was coming through that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. The temperature plummeted, then spiked, then became meaningless as local physics gave up trying to maintain consistency. What emerged defied comfortable description. Limbs that weren't limbs, features that suggested faces without committing to the concept presence that made the mind flinch away from direct observation. The dimensional brokers settled into approximate stability, achieving something vaguely humanoid through what might have been courtesy. Dr. Fate. The voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere. You summoned me for passage negotiation. These two require transit to their origin framework. Standard pathways prove insufficient. The broker's attention shifted to Yogiri and to Mochika. Examining them felt like being read at the molecular level by something that perceived matter as outdated notation. Incompatible origin framework. 7-degree displacement, hostile barrier conditions. The broker's analysis was immediate and absolute. Transit possible. Cost substantial. What cost? Tomochika demanded. Dimensional brokers don't accept currency. We accept weight choices, made actions taken, consequences accepted. The broker moved closer without appearing to move at all. For passage of this difficulty, the cost is equivalence. You must leave something of equal dimensional significance in exchange for passage home. What does that mean? Yogiri's voice was flat, but his attention was complete. Memory of each other. The bond that defines your relationship. Or the capability that makes you distinct, your power surrendered entirely. Or physical separation, one crosses, one remains. The broker's approximation of a face suggested what might have been sympathy. The hostile barriers require sacrifice to permit crossing. This is the nature of incompatible frameworks interacting. There is no free passage when realities reject connection. Yogiri stood abruptly. No deal. The alternative is remaining displaced indefinitely. These are the only terms under which hostile barriers permit crossing. Then we find different barriers. The broker's presence dimmed slightly. There are no different barriers. Your framework and this one are fundamentally incompatible. Any crossing requires equivalent sacrifice. This is not negotiation. It is the nature of dimensional mechanics when realities reject each other. Silence filled the chamber. Tomochika looked at Yogiri, seeing the same conclusion forming in his expression that was crystallizing in her mind. They could go home, but only by destroying what made home worth returning to. There has to be another way, she said quietly. There is not. The broker's certainty was absolute. I am sorry. Sometimes displacement is permanent, not because pathways don't exist, but because the cost of using them exceeds what travelers can accept. The broker began dissolving back into non-space, its purpose complete. If you reconsider, summon me again. The offer remains valid indefinitely, but the cost will not diminish. It vanished, taking the spatial distortion with it. The chamber returned to merely impossible, instead of actively hostile to comprehension. Tomochika sank into the nearest seat, her earlier hope collapsing into exhausted defeat. So that's it. We're stuck here? Forever? Not forever. Fate corrected gently. Until alternative pathways reveal themselves, or the framework's incompatibility resolves naturally. Such resolution can take centuries, but centuries. Tomochika laughed without humor. Might as well be forever. Yogiri hadn't moved, his expression unreadable. Thank you for trying. I will continue searching for alternatives. The tower maintains extensive archives of dimensional mechanics. Perhaps precedent exists for cases like yours. Fate's tone suggested he didn't believe his own words. Do not abandon hope yet. Zatanna appeared in the doorway, her timing suggesting she'd been monitoring the exchange. I'm sorry. I genuinely thought we could help. You tried. More than most. Tomochika stood composure, returning through sheer force of will. We should go. We've imposed enough. You're welcome to stay in the tower as long as you need, Zatanna offered. It's safe here. Better than being out there while Superman and Ares continue their escalation. Staying just delays the inevitable. Tomochika moved toward the exit, Yogiri following. We can't hide forever. Might as well face whatever's coming. Batman waited at the threshold. Not coincidence, but carefully planned timing. He'd arranged to meet them at dawn if the tower's efforts failed a contingency built on realistic assessment rather than optimism. It didn't work, Tomochika said simply. We're stuck here. Batman absorbed this without visible reaction. The offer of sanctuary stands. The tower is neutral ground. We appreciate it. But we're not built for hiding. She looked at Yogiri, receiving the slight nod that confirmed agreement. Take us back to the city. We'll figure something out. The return journey proceeded in silence. Batman led them through the underground routes to a maintenance exit in the industrial sector, the same area where they'd first encountered Ares' manipulation. If you need anything, Batman began. We'll manage. We always do. Tomochika's smile was brittle but genuine. Thanks for the attempt. It meant something that you tried. Batman departed into the shadows, leaving them alone in the empty sector as dawn began breaking over Metropolis. Tomochika leaned against a wall, exhaustion evident in every line of her posture. So, stuck in a world that wants to cage us, hunted by a god who wants to weaponize us with no way home and no safe harbor. She laughed bitterly. Could be worse. Could be, Yogiri agreed. Could be raining. Thunder rumbled overhead. Within seconds, rain began falling in heavy sheets. Tomochika stared at the sky. You had to say it. Didn't think it would actually. The air changed. That particular quality of wrongness that preceded divine manifestation. Ares stepped from between raindrops, his presence warping weather patterns into aesthetic background for his entrance. Back from the tower already. How convenient. His smile carried no warmth. I assume their specialists delivered disappointing news. We're not interested in your deals, Ares. Tomochika positioned herself between the god and Yogiri, despite knowing it was futile. Not even when the deal is your only remaining option. Ares gestured and the rain stopped falling around them, creating a bubble of dry air while the storm continued elsewhere. You can't go home. Can't stay hidden. Can't keep running from Superman's forces. Your alternatives have narrowed considerably, and you're here to exploit that. How divine. Tomochika's voice dripped sarcasm. I'm here to offer liberation. You want freedom from this world's entanglements. I can provide it not through dimensional transit, but through leverage. Ares stepped closer. Remove Superman, and I guarantee your sanctuary through divine covenant. No more running, no more fighting, no more watching every shadow for the next threat. Yogiri spoke for the first time since Ares arrived. Your sanctuary would last exactly as long as we're useful. Then we'd be next. You wound me. I'm offering genuine partnership. You remove the tyrant, I protect you from retaliation. Everyone benefits except Superman, who frankly deserves what's coming. No, you keep saying that. But your options keep evaporating. Ares' expression hardened. How long before one of Superman's teams gets lucky? You're powerful, but not omnipotent. Eventually circumstances win. Then circumstances win, still not killing for you. Ares studied Yogiri with the attention of a predator reassessing prey that refused to behave correctly. You're remarkably stubborn for someone with so few options. It's not stubbornness. It's disinterest. Yogiri met the god's eyes without flinching. You keep thinking we'll break if you push hard enough. But there's nothing to break. We don't care about your war, your ideology, your divine games. We care about being left alone, that's all. And I'm offering you exactly that if you'll just cooperate first, which would make us exactly what everyone assumes we are. Weapons waiting for the right wielder. Yogiri shook his head. Find someone else. The bubble of dry air collapsed. Rain resumed, but wrong sideways upward in patterns that suggested reality was accepting suggestions from something that didn't respect physics. Interesting boundary you maintain, only acting when she's threatened. Ares raised one hand. The ground beneath Tomochika's feet simply stopped being solid. She didn't fall, gravity changed its mind about her, specifically pulling her upward instead. Let's test that limitation properly. Yogiri's expression didn't change. Put her down. After we finish our discussion, without your studied indifference blocking actual dialogue. Ares lifted Tomochika higher, Rain bending around her suspended form. I'm not asking you to destroy Superman for ideology. I'm asking you to remove an obstacle between you and peace. Seems perfectly reasonable when framed correctly. Put her down. You know I can't be easily killed. I'm not Superman's soldiers or Wonder Woman's artifact. I'm war itself woven into the fabric of conflict. I've prepared for this encounter, anchored myself to the concept, not just the flesh. Your little boundary trick won't. Tomochika screamed, not from pain, from recognition of what Ares had just triggered, the understanding that divine arrogance had miscalculated fundamentally. Yogiri didn't move, didn't gesture, didn't even shift his weight. The god of war stopped, not died, stopped. Every divine particle of his manifestation locked mid-motion. His expression frozen between threat and the beginning of realization. The anchoring to concept, the preparation, the centuries of accumulated power, none of it mattered against something that didn't acknowledge divine authority. Tomochika fell as gravity remembered how it was supposed to work. She caught herself staring up at the frozen deity. Yogiri, what? He grabbed you. Threatened you directly, after being warned. Yogiri's voice was flat, drained. Some lessons require demonstration. The frozen form of Ares began fracturing. Not physical breaking, existential rejection. The manifestation, the avatar, the divine presence anchored to this plane, all of it encountering something that simply said no to its continued existence here. It wasn't the concept of war being erased. It wasn't Ares being deleted from the pantheon or cosmic hierarchy. It was his connection to this reality, this dimensional framework being severed with the finality of a closed door. War would continue. Conflict would persist. But Ares, this specific divine entity, this particular god, lost his ability to exist within Earth's boundaries. Banished not to death, but to separation. Cut off from the world he'd manipulated, forced back to whatever divine realm spawned him, the pathway between him and this reality sealed. Within seconds, the manifestation dissolved completely. No body, no essence. Just absence where presence had been. Tomochika stared at the empty space. Is he dead? Don't know. Don't care. He's not here anymore. That's what matters. Yogiri turned away, rain soaking him with indifference. Let's find shelter. I'm tired of being wet. They walked through the industrial sector, leaving behind the space where a god had learned the same lesson soldiers and superheroes had already absorbed. Don't touch her. Not a threat. Not even a warning anymore. Just the way things were. Behind them, divine essence finished dissipating from this dimensional plane, creating a vacancy that would ripple through pantheons and power structures in ways neither traveler could predict. But that was a problem for later. Right now they needed somewhere dry. Everything else could wait. The alert reached Superman at 0347 hours. Primary surveillance channels had gone dark at 0341, a localized blackout that triggered backup systems immediately. The dead drop message activated 6 minutes later, the kind of communication that only existed for catastrophic scenarios. Divine signature severed from local reality. Air rays. No anchor detected. Origin point industrial sector 7. Superman stood in the command center, reading the text 3 times before its meaning fully registered. Gods didn't get severed from reality. Divine anchors didn't just vanish. Yet the monitoring systems insisted on both impossibilities with the certainty of instruments that had never lied before. Wonder Woman entered at combat readiness, her expression confirming she'd received the same alert. It's them. We don't know that. Ares approaches them, then loses all connection to this plane. What other conclusion is there? She pulled up the last known tracking data showing heat signatures in Sector 7 before all surveillance went dark. He pushed them. They responded. And now war itself can't touch this world. Superman studied the data, searching for alternatives that would make this less catastrophic. Found none. Assemble the rapid response units. Full deployment. Superman, we need to evacuate the surrounding sectors first. If they can do this to a god, I'm aware of the implications. His voice carried the careful control of someone managing panic through rigid discipline. But we can't let them remain uncontained. Not now, not after this. This is exactly what Ares wanted. He manufactured the escalation, forced them to demonstrate capability against divinity itself, and now we have to respond or accept that our authority means nothing. Wonder Woman moved to the deployment console. We're following the strategy of a banished god. Then we're following it. Because the alternative is pretending we didn't just watch something cut a deity off from existence. Superman activated the command override, prioritizing this operation above all other ongoing missions. Lock down Sectors 7 and adjacent territories. Civilian evacuation protocols. I want a perimeter established before they relocate. The machinery of the regime shifted into crisis mode. Tactical units mobilized aerial units, launched the surveillance grid that had briefly failed, came back online with redundant systems. Within 8 minutes, Sector 7 was surrounded by the largest deployment of force Superman had authorized since establishing the regime. In the industrial zone's center, Yogiri and Tomochika had found shelter in an abandoned factory. Rain drummed against corrugated metal roofing, while they attempted to dry off using decades-old emergency blankets someone had left behind. "They're coming," Tomochika said quietly, listening to the distant sound of military vehicles establishing perimeter positions. "I know. We could run. Disappear into the underground tunnels before they close the net." Yogiri didn't respond, his attention fixed on nothing in particular. The same drained expression he'd worn since Ares dissolved from this plane of existence. "Talk to me." Tomochika moved closer. "What are you thinking? That running doesn't solve anything. They'll keep coming. Keep escalating. Keep treating us as problems that require solutions." He looked at her finally. "Maybe it's time to stop running. Stop running and do what... Let them try. Let them deploy everything they think will work. Then let them realize it won't." His voice carried no aggression, just exhausted certainty. "They need to understand before this can end." "Understand what?" "That we're not a problem they can solve through force. That some things just are, and you either accept them or keep destroying yourself trying to change them." Tomochika wanted to argue, to suggest alternatives, to propose literally anything except letting the regime's full might crash against them. But looking at Yogiri's expression, she recognized the futility. He'd made the decision already. Sometimes the only way forward was through. The first units arrived 12 minutes later. Enhanced armor, non-lethal compliance weapons training that emphasized overwhelming coordination over individual capability. They established positions around the factory with professional efficiency, creating a net designed to capture rather than kill. The loudspeaker crackled to life, Superman's voice carrying across the industrial wasteland. "This is your final warning. Exit the structure with hands visible. Submit to custody. This is your last chance for peaceful resolution." Tomochika looked at Yogiri. "Well, let's go meet them." They walked toward the factory's main entrance, neither hurrying nor hesitating. The doors opened onto a scene of militarized order vehicles positioned in overlapping fields of fire personnel, maintaining strict discipline, every element coordinated for maximum effectiveness. Superman descended from above, landing 20 meters from the entrance. His posture communicated readiness without aggression. The stance of someone prepared for violence while hoping to avoid it. What happened to Ares? Yogiri's response was immediate. He grabbed her. I stopped him. Stopped him how? Same way I stop everyone who crosses that boundary. He just didn't believe the boundary was real. Superman processed this, fitting it into threat models that had proven increasingly inadequate. Where is he now? Don't know. Don't care. He's not here anymore. That's what matters. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Yogiri's voice remained flat spent. He threatened Tomochika directly. Lifted her off the ground using divine power. I ended the situation. What happened to his connection to this world afterward isn't my concern. Wonder Woman moved into position beside Superman, her hand resting near the lasso of truth. You severed a god from reality. I defended my companion from someone who wouldn't take no for an answer. What he was doesn't change what he did. Superman felt the situation slipping toward the outcome he desperately tried to prevent. Metropolis had taught him what one justified escalation could cost. How certainty became catastrophe. How the conviction that you were right could blind you to being wrong. This was that moment again. Deploy overwhelming force and risk catastrophic casualties, or step back and accept that some variables couldn't be controlled. The choice should have been simple. The regime existed precisely for situations like this. But looking at two people who just wanted to be left alone, Superman found himself paralyzed by the recognition that force would only prove their point. Wonder Woman had no such hesitation. She moved faster than human perception. Lasso deployed decades of combat experience, driving tactics that had subdued gods and monsters. The golden rope caught Tomochika before anyone could react, coiling with artifact power that compelled truth and compliance from anything it touched. The lasso tightened, then found nothing. Not resistance, not struggle, just absence of purchase, like trying to bind shadow with rope. The artifact's compulsion, its divine mandate to extract truth and enforce obedience, encountered something that simply wasn't subject to those concepts. The rope slid free without resistance, not broken or defeated, just not applicable. Wonder Woman stared at the lasso in her hands, its golden coils inert and confused. The artifact hadn't failed. It had discovered that its fundamental premise didn't apply to these targets. She stepped back, voice low, into her comm channel. Pull civilians from adjacent sectors, now. The order went to auxiliary units, only not the main deployment, preserving chain of command while acknowledging danger. Superman heard it through his own comm and understood immediately what Wonder Woman had recognized. This wasn't a fight they could win. Superman raised one hand, the gesture for hold position. Stand down. Everyone stand down. Superman, we need to... I said stand down. His eyes never left Yogiri. This escalates the moment we treat it as combat. So we're not treating it as combat. They severed Ares from this world. They neutralized the lasso. They're demonstrating capability that threatens everything we've built. Wonder Woman's voice carried the strain of someone arguing against every instinct. We can't let this continue. Watch me. Superman took a deliberate step backward. All units established 2-kilometer perimeter. Observation only. No engagement without direct authorization. The order contradicted every principle the regime operated on. Variables got controlled, threats got contained, demonstrations of unauthorized power got shut down immediately and completely. But Superman was giving ground, retreating from confrontation, allowing the unknown to remain unknown. Wonder Woman stared at him. You're making a mistake. Possibly, but I'm making it consciously. He turned to address the assembled forces. Pull back. Maintain observation only. Anyone who engages without authorization will face consequences. The units began withdrawing, confusion evident in their synchronized movements. They had deployed for containment and were being ordered to retreat. The cognitive dissonance was palpable. Yogiri watched the withdrawal with no visible reaction. Smart choice. It's not a choice. its acceptance of reality. Superman's voice carried exhaustion that matched Yogiri's own. You're not an enemy. You're a limit. And I have been pretending limits don't exist. And what's that? That you can't be controlled, can't be contained, can't be threatened into compliance. I can either accept that or keep sacrificing personnel until enough bodies pile up to prove what I should have recognized immediately. Superman gestured to the withdrawing forces. So I'm letting you leave. No pursuit, no tracking, no further custody attempts. You walk away and we pretend this never happened. Tomochika didn't trust the offer. Until when? Until you decide we're too dangerous after all. Until the next crisis makes you change your mind. Until you give me actual reason to change it. You've defended yourselves when threatened. Haven't initiated violence. Haven't sought conflict. Haven't tried to leverage your capability for gain. That's not how threats behave. Superman's expression showed the cost of this admission. You're people who got caught in circumstances beyond your control. I'm choosing to treat you accordingly. Wonder Woman made a sound of disgust. This is weakness. You're letting fear dictate policy. I'm letting wisdom override pride. There's a difference. Superman turned to her. We can't win this confrontation. Not without casualties we can't accept, so we don't confront, we adapt. By surrendering authority, by demonstrating that sufficient power exempts you from our laws, by recognizing that our laws don't apply to everyone, can't apply to everyone. Some people exist outside frameworks we can enforce. He looked back at Yogiri and Tomochika. You want to leave. You want to hide. You want to keep searching for a way home, search. I won't stop you, won't help you, won't interfere unless you force me to. Yogiri studied Superman with the first hint of genuine interest he'd shown. You mean that? I do. Because the alternative is becoming everything I swore I'd prevent. The moment I authorize force against people who've only defended themselves, the moment I treat existence outside my control as justification for elimination. That's when the regime completes its transformation into tyranny. Superman's voice hardened. I won't let that happen. Even if it means accepting variables I can't manage. The units had completed their withdrawal, establishing the ordered 2-kilometer perimeter. Yogiri and Tomochika stood alone in the space that had been surrounded by overwhelming force minutes earlier. We'll leave, Tomochika said carefully. Find somewhere away from your cities, your checkpoints, your infrastructure. Stay invisible. Appreciated. Superman lifted off slowly, putting distance between them. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the checkpoint, for the medical facility, for every time we treated you as problems instead of people, you deserved better. He departed Wonder Woman, following after a final look of profound disagreement. The industrial sector returned to its usual abandonment, the military presence dissolving as rapidly as it had materialized. Tomochika watched them go. That was unexpected. He learned faster than most. Yogiri started walking direction seemingly random. Doesn't mean it's over. Just means the next phase won't be his decision. What do you mean? Superman controls the regime, but he doesn't control everything. Someone will decide we're too dangerous. Someone always does. Yogiri's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd lived this pattern before. We bought time. That's all. They walked through the industrial wasteland as dawn fully broke, two figures moving away from civilization, seeking the margins again. In the command center, Superman watched them disappear from tracking range. Wonder Woman stood beside him, radiating disapproval that needed no words. You've set a precedent. Everyone with sufficient power will now expect the same treatment. Perhaps. Or perhaps we've established that the regime recognizes its own limits. That we don't treat power itself as criminality. Superman deactivated the displays. Time will tell which interpretation becomes reality. And when they kill someone, when their defensive boundaries extend to situations you didn't anticipate, then we respond proportionally. But we respond to actions, not capabilities. That's the line we can't cross. He turned to face her directly. I know you disagree. I know this looks like weakness. But maintaining the regime's principles matters more than maintaining its appearance of omnipotence. Wonder Woman said nothing, her silence communicating what words couldn't. The disagreement was fundamental, unbridgeable. Superman had chosen principle over pragmatism, had let unknowns remain unknown, rather than force certainty through violence. Whether that choice was wisdom or weakness would depend entirely on what came next. In the underground network beneath Metropolis, Batman received reports of the confrontation and withdrawal. He analyzed the decision pattern, recognizing the shift. Superman had blinked, had acknowledged limits, had accepted that some variables couldn't be controlled. The regime would never be quite the same. The certainty that had defined it, that sufficient force could solve any problem, had fractured. Not shattered, not yet, but cracked enough that alternatives became possible. Batman began adjusting his own strategies accordingly. The game had changed. In a safe house that existed between official records, Zatanna contacted Constantine. It's done. Ares is gone from this plane. Severed, you mean? War's still out there, just can't touch Earth anymore. Constantine's voice carried grudging respect. Ballsy. Also means the Pantheon's watching now. Should we warn them? They'll figure it out when Zeus shows up. Or doesn't. The conversation ended quickly. Zatanna sat considering the implications. A god banished Superman, backing down the regime's certainty cracked. All because two people had established a boundary and refused to negotiate it. The tower would keep its sanctuary offer active, just in case. In the abandoned office building, Yogiri and Tomochika settled into temporary shelter, already planning the next move. We can't stay here long, Tomochika said. Then we move again, same as always. They sat in silence. Two travelers stuck in a world that couldn't decide what they were. Outside Metropolis continued its orchestrated existence. Inside, two people rested, knowing the respite was temporary. For now they had shelter. For now they had each other. The boundary held. The world didn't, not for long. The tower's defenses rippled as something insistent pushed against them. Zatanna appeared at the threshold, her expression suggesting she knew exactly who was demanding entry, and wasn't pleased about it. Let him in, Dr. Fate said quietly. He's drunk. He's Constantine. The distinction is academic. Zatanna gestured, and the barrier parted. Constantine stumbled through tracking mud and the smell of cheap whiskey across floors that actively rejected both. We have a problem, he announced without preamble. Dr. Fate turned from his crystalline arrays. Specify. Ares is gone. Severed from Earth, banished to whatever divine holding cell gods inhabit when they lose anchor rights. The Pantheon noticed. Constantine lit a cigarette, ignoring the tower's lack of ventilation. Zeus is not pleased. How displeased? Zatanna crossed her arms. The kind where he's debating whether to make an example or cut his losses. Ares got banished by mortals. That's embarrassing for the entire Greek divine hierarchy. Constantine gestured with his cigarette. But here's the fun part, he's also terrified. Because if those two can sever war from reality, what stops them from doing it to lightning? Fate's presence expanded slightly. Zeus will not act directly. He learned that lesson with Kratos. But he will observe. And if they demonstrate further capability, then we have a war between mortals and Olympus, which is exactly the kind of apocalyptic nonsense I came here to prevent. Constantine crushed out his cigarette. So, options. We make those two someone else's problem, or we figure out how to extract them before Zeus decides preventive action beats cautious observation. The dimensional broker stated passage was impossible without unacceptable sacrifice, Fate said. That broker specialized in hostile barriers. There are other specialists. Constantine pulled a flask from his coat. I know something. Dangerous, morally questionable, but functional. Zatanna's voice hardened. I don't like where this is going. You never do. That's how you know it's one of my plans. Constantine took a swig. There's an entity that trades in what brokers won't touch. Doesn't deal in sacrifice or equivalent exchange. Deals in debts, futures, actions you'll take years from now. Absolutely not. Zatanna stepped forward. We're offering an option. What they do with it is their choice. Constantine met her glare. Would you rather leave them here until Zeus decides they're too dangerous? Or until the regime finds a containment method that works? Fate interrupted. This entity operates outside conventional magical frameworks. Operates outside everything. No rules, no limitations, no cosmic oversight. Constantine set the flask down. I can make an introduction. Let them decide if the price is worth paying. And the price, a favor, unspecified. To be called at some unknowable future date. Constantine's expression sobered. It won't ask them to kill, but it might ask them to let something happen. To stand aside. To permit consequences they'd rather prevent. Zatanna looked at Fate. Some silent communication passed between them. Contact them first, she said finally. Tell them what you're proposing. If they're interested, you make the introduction, but this is their choice. When have I ever forced anyone into anything? Constantine grinned. Don't answer that. He departed through the barrier Zatanna opened, leaving them alone. This will end poorly, Fate observed. Most things involving Constantine do. But he's right about the alternatives. In the abandoned office building, Yogiri woke to find Constantine sitting across from him. The wards Tomochika had set were still active, which meant he'd been invited in somehow. Batman's route, Constantine said, reading the question. Plus, your building's flagged on 3 occult grids, not exactly hidden. Yogiri sat up, checking that Tomochika was still asleep. What do you want? To offer you what the tower couldn't. Passage home without costing you each other or your power. Constantine pulled out a cigarette, paused. Mind if I smoke? Yes. Fair. He put it away. There's an entity I know. Operates outside normal frameworks. It trades in passage across impossible barriers. And wants what in return? A favor. Called later. Could be years. Could be decades. Constantine leaned forward. It won't ask you to kill. Won't ask you to betray each other. But it might ask you to permit something. To let events unfold, you'd rather stop. To stand in a specific place while cosmic forces collide and do nothing. Yogiri studied him. Why tell me this? Because Zeus is watching. You've got maybe 48 hours before he decides if you're a threat requiring elimination. Constantine's honesty was almost refreshing. You leave problems stop cascading into my life. Selfish motivation. But it aligns with your survival. Tomochika appeared in the doorway. This entity has a name. Several. I call it the Broker of Edges. Constantine stood. I can arrange a meeting. You hear the offer, decide if you can live with it. If not, we're back to where we started. And if we accept, then you go home. Actually home. Constantine moved toward the door. 48 hours. Think about it. He left. Tomochika sat on the desk. Thoughts? Don't trust him. But he's not lying about Zeus. Yogiri stretched. Divine hierarchies don't tolerate uncertainty. Either we're acceptable or we're not. No middle ground. So we take the meeting. Your call. Tomochika thought about everything they'd been through. The checkpoint, the medical facility, Ares Superman's forces. Thought about being stuck here forever. Set it up. The meeting occurred in a space that hurt to perceive existing in gaps between realities. The Broker of Edges manifested as something that suggested form, without committing presence, without substance. You seek passage across hostile barriers. Its voice came from impossible directions. "We seek passage home," Tomochika said. "Without sacrificing what we are, I can provide this. My price is not equivalence, not sacrifice." The entity shifted. "A favor, unspecified. Called at a time of my choosing, you will perform one action I request." "That's worse than sacrifice," Yogiri said flatly. "Perhaps. The parameters the action will not require killing anyone you wouldn't already choose to kill. Will not require betrayal of each other. Will not require surrender of identity or capability." The entity's presence solidified. "Beyond those limits, the action is mine to define. We could refuse when you call," Tomochika said. "Then the passage collapses retroactively. You return to this moment, this world. But I have never invoked that clause." The entity paused. "You will not like the favor, but you will perform it, because you will have given your word." Constantine spoke from the periphery. "It's not lying. The parameters are real, but the action could be anything within them. Delivering a message, standing somewhere specific, letting something happen that every instinct screams to prevent." Yogiri looked at Tomochika. Silent communication passed between them. "We need timing parameters," Yogiri said. "You can't call the favor while we're endangered or incapacitated." "Acceptable. And we verify the action falls within limits before committing." "Acceptable. If new information reveals the action violates parameters, the favor is renegotiated or voided." "Also acceptable. You negotiate well." The entity seemed pleased. "Do you accept?" They looked at each other. Tomochika spoke. "We accept." "Then the compact is sealed." Reality shifted. Something fundamental changed, a weight settling onto them that would never fully lift. A tear appeared in space, clean surgical. A doorway leading somewhere that felt like home. Thunder rumbled at the edges of perception. Not weather, something larger. The entity's presence flickered. "He is watching," it said quietly. "Go, now." Tomochika stared at the tear. "That's your origin. Stable for 30 seconds." The entity was already fading. "The debt will find you when needed." Yogiri moved toward the tear. Tomochika followed. At the threshold, she looked back at Constantine. "Thank you, I think." "Don't. You just bought freedom with future pain." But something in his expression suggested approval. "Good luck." They stepped through, the passage sealed with finality. Constantine stood alone, the broker watching with incomprehensible attention. "They will honor it," the entity said. "I know." Constantine lit his cigarette. "Just make sure the favor doesn't break them. The compact prevents that. But your concern is noted." It vanished. Constantine stepped back into normal reality, emerging in the tower. "Done," he said to Fate and Zatanna. "They're home. And the price, Fate's voice carried cosmic weight. "Standard terms. A favor within parameters." Constantine took a drag. "They'll honor it. Which means eventually that thing will have access to someone who can sever gods from reality." Zatanna looked horrified. "You just gave it that kind of leverage." "I gave 2 people their freedom and prevented a divine war. What it does with the favor is a future problem." Constantine headed for the exit. "Right now I'm getting properly drunk." In Metropolis, Superman received word that the targets had vanished completely. No traces, no signatures, nothing except footage and testimony. Wonder Woman entered the command center. "They're gone." "I know. Do you think they left, or hiding better?" Superman studied the empty displays. "I think they found a way out." "And you're relieved?" "I'm grateful we didn't have to become what stopping them would have required." Wonder Woman's silence spoke volumes. But she didn't argue, just stood beside him, processing what the last week had meant. Batman received confirmation through his channels. The travelers were gone, truly gone. He filed the information, noting the precedent, the crack in Superman's certainty. The game had changed, something to build on. In a throne room of stone and fire, a ruler observed reports of mortals severing gods from dimensional planes. Ares had been promised for punishment. That delivery would never occur. Curious, mortals who could banish deities, who had disappeared without explanation, variables requiring monitoring. For now, in a world 7 degrees removed, Yogiri and Tomochika emerged into familiar surroundings. Their school, their world. Reality operating on rules they understood. Tomochika collapsed onto a bench laughing and crying. "We're home, actually home." Yogiri sat beside her. "We are. What do we tell people?" "Nothing. We were gone a few hours, got lost, came back." He closed his eyes. "The rest stays between us. And the debt, we deal with it when it comes." Tomochika looked around their world. Thought about the price, a blank check to something outside all frameworks, called at an unknowable time. It should have terrified her. But looking at Yogiri safe and home, she didn't care. They were home. Whatever came later would come. A shadow fell across them, too dark for the afternoon sun. Tomochika glanced up, nothing there. But for just a moment, she'd felt something. A presence. A reminder. "When I call," then it was gone. She said nothing to Yogiri, who was already half asleep. "Some things you carried quietly." The debt was real. It would wait, but it was real. In the tower, Doctor. Fate contemplated residual traces. The dimensional signature reality bending to accommodate their exit, the sheer impossibility Constantine had arranged. This will have consequences. The tower offered no response. Consequences were inevitable. The question was never if, only when. The travelers were gone. The world could breathe. Until the debt came due, the boundary had held. The cost would wait. And somewhere outside time, a ledger gained a new line.
Hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to turn on notification so you won't miss out future videos. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time in this channel.